The 1887 incident was ruled guilty, but the evidence told a very different story. On the morning of November 11, 1887, a scaffold stood at Chicago's Cook County Jail. 4 men, Albert Parsons, August Spies, Adolph Fisher, and George Engel, were led to the gallows. The crowd that had come to watch included policemen, politicians, and a curious public. The charge was conspiracy. The stakes were ordinary. Life, liberty, a message. Chicago in 1886 was a city growing too fast. Rail yards, stock yards, and factories clustered near the Loop. Immigrants filled tenements on Halsted and Clark. The International Harvester, McCormick strike, had boiled over on May 3, 1886, when Chicago police fired into the crowd of striking workers at the McCormick harvesting machine plant, killing at least 2 and wounding many. On May 4th, a rally at Haymarket Square on Des Plaines Street near Lake Street convened to protest those killings.
They think they can crush us!
At 10:30 p.m., as police moved to disperse a breakup, someone hurled a bomb into their line. The blast killed at least 1 officer immediately and fatally wounded several others. Civilians were killed and dozens injured. Chaos followed. According to newspaper dispatches and police reports, 8 anarchists and labor organizers were arrested in the days after the blast. Spies, Parsons, Fisher, Engel, Louis Ling, Samuel Fielden, Michael Schwab, and Oscar Niebuhr. None of them was caught throwing the bomb. The city demanded a culprit. The authorities picked a conspiracy. The trial began in late June 1886 in Cook County under Judge Joseph E. Gary. Prosecutors presented fiery speeches printed in radical newspapers and the defendants' public rhetoric as proof that the men had incited violence. Defense witnesses were repeatedly excluded. Translation problems plagued hearings. Many witnesses spoke German. According to court records, evidence that would have placed suspicion on unnamed individuals was ignored. The courtroom often felt like a stage for public vengeance. By August 1886, jurors returned guilty verdicts. Sentences were death for 4, prison terms or commuted sentences for the rest. Appeals were slow. Months passed as petitioners begged for clemency. The governor of Illinois, Richard J. Oglesby, refused. But what investigators found next would change everything. Outside the courtroom, evidence suggested a different narrative. Witnesses later testified to seeing a man named Rudolf Schnaubelt fleeing the scene. Schnaubelt, an exile with known ties to other anarchists in Chicago, reportedly disappeared from American jurisdiction and was suspected by some to be the bomber. Other investigators pointed to police uniforms and chaotic crowd movement that made identification impossible. Forensic standards were primitive. There was no clear chain of causation linking the 8 defendants to the bomb. Behind the headlines, another almost unbelievable fact surfaced. Louis Ling, jailed with the others, reportedly hid a blasting cap in his mouth and detonated it in his cell, shattering his jaw and killing himself before he could be executed. His death was grisly and left a raw public image that hardened sympathies on both sides. The hangings on November 11th were brutal theater. Albert Parsons walked calmly to the scaffold and read a farewell. August Spies maintained his innocence until the end. The executions did not stop the debates. Labor organizers and foreign diplomats protested. Anarchist cells around the world lit candles in mourning. Political fallout followed. In 1893, Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld reviewed the records and issued pardons for Samuel Fielden, Michael Schwab, and Oscar Niebuhr, calling the trial unjust, noting the absence of direct evidence and prosecutorial overreach. Altgeld's decision cost him politically. Newspapers excoriated him and politicians used the pardon as ammunition. The 4 executed men were never exonerated in life. The suspected bomber, Schnaubelt, was never extradited and eluded formal punishment. Decades later, Haymarket became a symbol. Labor movements memorialized the men as martyrs. The Knights of Labor and later unions used the hangings as rallying points. The state's machinery had called a verdict and hung men on the basis of speeches, association, and public rage more than on direct proof of an act. According to surviving court records, eyewitness statements, and the governor's later proclamation, the case that punished 8 men with prison and death rested on a tangle of political fear, flawed testimony, and the suggestion of guilt rather than forensic certainty. A city executed 4 men while the man who likely threw the bomb walked free. The county stamped guilty in ink. The past has its own verdicts. What remains is the evidence, and the question of what kind of justice allows a noose to answer what a jury cannot.